Thank you. It's always fun to be here and talking about cars with other car people. First, the as it's the notes mentions it's buying a car. I thought I would kind of go over the insurance, the restoration, security, accidents, and what you can expect owning a car. Just kind of make people aware if you haven't already jumped into the vintage car thing. I always say to people when you're looking at a car, kind of look at a budget in your head and try to stay a little less emotional than just because people tend to, when they're emotional, tend to overpay. So if a car is worth $10,000 generally because it was the same color as your grandfather's and same color interior, you might want to look at it and say, geez, I really, really, really want that. And, you'll pay the extra $2,000 for it. But I try to be a little more less emotional in the fact that something always kind of crops up later on another car, and you can always in your mind think, did I make the right choice? That kind of thing. That you know it's always tough to do that. I have friends that go through vintage cars like water, buy sell, and they never seem to be happy. So just try to really look at what you like, maybe test drive the car before you buy it. I was not that good. Being a Volkswagen person, I bought a car on the West Coast and had it shipped to Ontario. All the things I tell people not to do, but anyway, things alcohol could do to you. Just remember also when buying a car, Alex has a picture of a Corvette here, one of my favorite cars, and the Cadillac Custom here. That when buying certain cars, just remember that if they were expensive new, parts are most generally going to be expensive later on. So keep that in the back of your head. Just because you got a Ferrari at a really good price because there was some damage and you can repair it, there's always going to be those little things that need to be repaired, and you're going to pay Ferrari prices or Mercedes prices. I have a soft spot for Mercedes, but my wallet does not. So just kind of remember that when you're looking at that kind of stuff. Sometimes you will have to order things from other countries, especially Europe, where shipping or mail costs are expensive. So keep that in the back of your head when looking at any new car. Now, once you've decided on a car, next thing I like to say is getting it appraised and find an insurance company that suits you and getting that car appraised. You notice the black Studebaker on the left side of the screen. Insurance companies just really don't like to see real racy cars. They think you're an extra risk. They kind of like the car on the right, which is a Citroen Traction Avant, which is kind of the nice kind of vintage car insurance companies like you to buy. Now, you can always evaluate your car and kind of make it your own, but when you buy it, kind of keep it, downplay it, or keeps the costs down on your insurance, the plainer the car, and your reputation with the insurance company. Now, I always try to emphasize here, if you have an agent and not talking to somebody at a large corporation like some of the banks that have insurance companies, because it's tougher to get a direct answer. Somebody will talk to you one day and you'll phone back the next day because they didn't get back to you, and you'll get a totally different answer. So just keep that in mind when you're dealing with insurance companies. So like I say, try to get an agent that represents you. Companies like Haggerty or I use Intact Insurance here in Canada. They will do vintage cars. Vintage motorcycles are a different thing. They all seem to do different things for different vehicles. So now, one other thing I try to let people know when it comes to the appraisal, if you do add something to your car, like here, my car, I added wheels to it. In the picture on the right, you'll notice just plain Volkswagen wheels that are chromed. I wanted something a little lighter and a little more stylish in my eyes, and they kind of suited me better, and they were all polished and looked really kind of nice, and they were slightly larger than the ones I have on the car in the picture. Uh, so those are the kind of things, and let your insurance company know that you've changed something. The wheels on some of, like my car, raised the cost of the car probably by $1,000 or a little more, depending on the condition. So keep that in mind when you have an appraisal, that you can go back. You can always talk to your appraiser and say, I've added A, B, and C to the car, and that I want to, it is change the car in such a way that you've improved it or added to the value of the car. Maintenance things like I put a new clutch in the car or I put new tires on the car really don't mean a lot to insurance companies. All they want is value in the car. For example, if you cut the roof off and added a sunroof, or you put safer, better tail lights on it, or you re-chrome the bumpers, something to that effect, that adds value to the car and uh, not just maintenance. So in ever a claim, if you have to do one, is you can't turn around and say to them, well, I just put new tires in, or I just bought a new motor, or something like that. But if you said, I put in a whole new leather interior, that goes towards the overall value of the car. But a clutch or new tires or brake cables or brake lines or anything like that, that is basic maintenance of the car. So just keep that in mind when you keep your value or evaluating your car. Now, moving on here, the next best thing is sometimes buying a car. You find the car of your dreams and it's in the condition like this Isetta here, and you want to restore it. So keep in mind too that when you're doing a restoration, costs can go, I could say, out of control. And that's the best thing I can say for people, that they tend to be go all the way. Something on a car like this, for example, big fellow may say, your upholsterer might turn around and say, geez, I can put you into a leather for another $500. And you think, wow, and things like that just keep adding and adding and adding up. So I always look at it as get the car restored and make sure that you work within a budget, so that I think you can add the extras later on. You can add better tires. There's always the slim chance, believe it or not, that you could end up not liking the car. So drive it. And I've known people over the years, being a car guy, have bought a car, kept it for a year or so, and they just don't like driving it. They're too tall, or their legs are too long, or their wife doesn't like the car, or they found that they're traveling a lot, and a car like this Isetta is not for traveling a lot. I want to go to the cottage, take my car, something to that effect. Some cars are just not as well suited for you after you restore it. My car, for example, has fairly stiff suspension. I solved some of the problems by changing the seat, but I knew that when I bought the car. So as you can see here, Alex has a picture of the seats. The far seat in the background is out of a Porsche 911, and it is a suspension seat. So actually the base of the seat will move slightly due to my stiff suspension. The seat in the foreground is out of a Volkswagen Golf, and it's very firm with just foam. So it has no give whatsoever. So driving along will literally, use that term, jar your teeth. So those kind of things, may make you change your mind. So that's why I say keep to a budget so that you don't go over. And one other thing to keep in mind, if you go over that budget, sometimes you can't recoup that cost that you went over. And many times I've known people to turn around and have spent 20, 30, $40,000 on a car, and the value of the car may be, take the initial cost of say $10,000 for the car, add another $30,000 on the restoration, the car is now 40,000, and you might luckily get 25 for it realistically. So be realistic about it. If you plan to keep the car and it's the car of your dreams, then it's worth doing. If you see the car on the right, that's my friend Norm Mort. He restored the car, and I think he found it a little larger than he had anticipated. It was a different kind of car. This is an Allard, and he eventually ended up selling the car and moving on to something else. But it is, it's interesting. I think he liked it, but he didn't like it that much, kind of thing. So you have to keep your, like I say, your focus as to the way you want to do your car. Do it after, like get a decent paint job or things like that so that you can feel proud of your car, but don't go over and go to the best restoration shop around that's going to charge you triple what you would pay for your local restoration person. My car was done on the cheap, so if I sell it, I use it. That's one other key thing to remember is on the car, even if you do go over your budget, if you drive the car, keep the car, enjoy the car for a while, then you can amortize your investment over a period of time, giving you don't feel as bad selling the car for say $25,000, even though you have made $35,000 into it. So keep that in mind. I know there's a lot of people out there, and if you're hunting for a car, you're going to turn around and say, well, I have $50,000 in this car. I'll take, 48,000 for it. Be realistic here as to the cost. You have to look at certain things. Another deal will always come along. I always say that to people, and somebody told me that many, many years ago, and true to his word, I found a car better priced. When I bought my car, I didn't expect to find one. I know there's very few of my model of car out there because they rusted so quickly. And there was a situation where the owner was selling the car, and he had gotten in over his head, and then he bought another project, and he did okay on that because it was a rare car. And he was able to recoup some of the money I think he lost on my car on the next car, kind of thing, for the value of the cost. So keep that in mind when buying a car. I can't emphasize it enough to just, if you love the car after you've restored it, enjoy driving, enjoy taking it out, then start spending a little more money on it to, how can I say, make it more yours. Then get the leather seats or the nicer tires or an extra set of alloy wheels that will really set the car off But keep that in mind. Now, my next kind of big, how can I say, part about cars is security. And excuse me, I like to tell people a really good story my grandfather once told me. He was sitting on his porch one day, and the neighbor across the street waved to him, and he had two huge suitcases, and he waved to him. And my grandfather looked at him. He talked to him occasionally. And all of a sudden, the fellow got in a taxi cab and off he went. Excuse me. And about a week later, a big moving truck came up to the front door and emptied the place out. My grandmother said this moving truck was there during the day. And, you know, they locked the doors, closed it all up, and away they went. Well, about 2 weeks later, the fellow shows up and they had cleaned his house out. And he came running over to my grandfather saying, "Help me, help me." My grandfather said, "Well, if you had told me that you were going on holidays, I would have called the police when I saw the moving truck come up to the front of your house." And this has happened a few times over the years, as a car person and as an appraiser, that people have come home and their car is gone. They haven't told their neighbor, and a plumbing truck shows up in front of the house and nobody thinks much of it. You know, they're getting repairs done. And there's a quiet, keep to yourself kind of people instead of letting people know. And boom, their prize in this case was a Corvette here where I live in Whitby. And it just disappeared off the face of the earth. Finding a car after it's been taken, if it's something special, generally is tough. I know a friend that probably 30 years ago lost his prize 1961 Corvette, never to be seen again, never to be found. So just keep that in mind. Some of the things I like to emphasize here about keeping your car safe is, of course, locking all the doors. I'm the worst one. I will go out during the day, leave the door open. That's a bad habit. One of my car friends who's a policeman said to me, "Don't do that. You know, you're just asking for trouble." And he has to be right. So make sure your doors and your garage doors, as you can see from this picture, I have one of the slide locks and it has a hole in the end of it. And the reason for that is you can't pop it back open, slide the door open, away you go. I don't have powered garage doors, but even if they unbolt the bolts, as you can see on the right side of the lock, you'd have to smash that lock to pieces before you can get it through the little hole. So just keep that in the back of your head. Little things like that slow them down. And you're making all kinds of racket like that, they're going to alert that nosy neighbor across the street. You know, the Mrs. Kravitz, who was always looking out the window, who I'm very fortunate to have one of those across the street from me. Very nice lady, but she keeps an eye on the house. She knows my children's cars, so, or anybody else that's going to be in the house, you know, to water the plants, or in one case, feed the animals. So just keep that in mind. Now, I always suggest to people locking up your tool cabinet. That's another one, because you're by having access to all your tools, it's easier for them to break into your car or to remove the locks in some cases if you have the right tools. Take them out, replace your lock, and literally start your car and drive it out the door. So when I go away, as you can see in that picture, I snap a padlock on my tool crib, and most of my tools, the electric tools, the grinding tools, the drilling tools are all in there. And it, again, hampers the person from taking your car easily, because you're denying them the use of your tools. You know, they can do a few things with a wrench, but now on the left side of the picture, which is kind of interesting, I learned this from someone. Shutting the power off in your garage. I know if you have a security system, that's a no-no, but if you see, I have two circuits to my garage, and easily one of the circuits can be shut off. So I can literally shut the lights off in the garage. No lights in a garage. They're relying on my window and my small door on the opposite side of the garage. So there's not a lot of light in there. They can't generally plug a tool in because there's no power, and it doesn't make for an easy situation to easily get the car out without working with flashlights, which, you know, people see flashlights waving by in a window. They tend to say, what's going on in there? And when the lights are out and there's flashlights flashing in the window and the house lights aren't really on, then it alerts some suspicion. Um, and if it's generally, I'm in your garage to take your car, yeah, they'll be a little more diligent because the car is rare. But if you can slow them down, that may alert your neighbors or people going by that something's up in your garage. Now, one of the other things, then we get into a situation where you could remove certain things from the car. For example, in my case, as you can see here on the right, the wheel nuts on my car are rather strange looking. This is a German rendition of wheel nuts, and as we call them, lug bolts. And if I were to take one wheel off, take those out, put them in the house, they would probably be 3 or 4 days before they found some, ordered them, brought them to the house, and made sure they even had the right size um, to put the wheel back on. And on the other case, as my friend used to do, he would take the wheel out and put it in the house, and no wheel, no drive. So again, the tow truck showing up at the house makes it a little difficult to move a car missing a wheel. And that is not easy to do. And I've been in that situation, pulling a car out of the ground, should I say, rescuing the car. So is again, making it as difficult as possible. The other question, yeah, I have here is, I don't think I gave Alex a picture of it, is remove the rotor out of the off the distributor. As you know, the car, even if you can get it started, is it'll just keep spinning forever. And there's other little tricks. Everybody knows their own car, so you keep an eye on the little things that can stop the car. Now, just have to remember, if you do take the wheel nuts off and you put them somewhere in the basement, just try to make a mental note or make a note to your on your workbench in the house to say, I put them in blah, blah, blah. A friend of mine who took the wheel nuts off his car, put them somewhere, and it took him like a week to find those wheel lug bolts, as you can see here. And it wasn't fun because he missed a show because he couldn't get the wheel back on. And he wasn't going to spend a lot of money trying to order a new set of bolts. So keep that in mind. And in the case, the distributor, it's an easy fix. It only takes a couple minutes if your car has it easy accessible to the to the uh, to the distributor cap. You just pop it off, pop it back on again so it doesn't look out of place. That can be really frustrating. And if it's a car thief, if he knows a lot about cars, he might check there. But there's, another one is, you can always go for the security devices, but most criminals are looking for an electronic device on the car and they know how to work them. So there are some new tricks out there that if you talk to some of the speed shops will tell you this or that. I know many of these security devices that are in the cars now are much, much more sophisticated than years ago. when I was big into it. When I was writing for the Toronto Star, I remember writing about a situation where the cars were stolen. They were put inside containers to ship to Europe, to Eastern Europe. And what was happening is once the cars were inside the container, the the signal did not go through the steel in the containers, but that's all been changed now. Today's frequencies are much, much better. And even if the car arrives in Europe, comes out of the, it's totally missed or hidden in the car, satellite satellites will pick up where the car is and alert the insurance company, i.e. the police, who will alert Interpol, and it'll kind of go from there. Whether you'll get your car back is another thing. I like, that was sort of my next part of the topic, is dealing with your insurance company. So accidents, thefts, and things like that. There is a whole way of dealing with insurance companies, because it can be difficult on how to do things. You just have to remember, if you're in an accident, as you can see, I was with my car. I took it home first, and I contacted the insurance company and I said, I may want to put in a claim for my car. I was informed at that point that they would hold the claim against me for 9 years. And looking at what I was paying for insurance and the cost of repairing the car, I chose to repair the car myself. So keep that in mind. I know my son bought a Porsche that bounced off a guardrail on the Don Valley in Toronto, and by the time they replaced the 3 fenders on the car was written off. Once the car is written off, then you have to go through a whole new procedure about getting the car structurally checked again. So you have to take it to a body shop that does that kind of structural evaluation of the car. It's not like a bent fender, as you can see. In my case, the passenger side front fender was replaced. It couldn't be easily fixed. The driver's side fender was easily fixed. Just a side note here, when my car was damaged, we did find out the previous owner had done work on it. There was a whole pile of rust between the hood and the fender, which we did find when we were doing the repairs on the car, which for me was an added bonus, in the fact that we were fixed a bunch of poor repairs that were never painted or sealed up, undercoated, etc. I also did find that my car had been involved in an accident previous to me owning it. So that was kind of interesting. That did not come out in the purchase of the car, but who knows? I mean, the old, what was that? The old saying, caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. So you are always going to find surprises, no matter how thorough you are. I've been wrenching cars for all these years. When I looked over my car, that one I missed. Like I said, I probably should have been a little more diligent, but I did send friends to Vancouver to look at the car before it was shipped back, sight unseen by me, other than short of pictures. But what I did have was probably 28 pages on the internet how the car was built. So I did see most of the build of the car. So I was pretty sure, and I never did run into any huge structural problems. But now, when we're talking about accidents and things like thefts, you need to know, like I said, first of all, if you can get your car home and you're in control of it, they are not pressuring you to get rid of the car, because when a car is at a yard, it's costing the insurance company a lot of money. So first of all, they want to move that car as quick as possible. They want to, sometimes it's up to $50 a day, depending on where you live. So they want to move that car, make a settlement quickly, and move on, kind of thing. So So keep that in the back of your head if you can do that. I know some of you, if you live in some subdivisions or condominium project where you may not be able to put the car in the driveway, you might be able to put it in and cover it over and keep prying eyes out. But now, one other thing that's come up recently, and I talked to my insurance company about it, is somebody who the car has been damaged. You say your car has been rear-ended or something like that, and you want to buy back the car. The car is going to cost a lot of money to repair. The insurance company is not going to do that, or they would rather pay you and just take the car and sell what's worth or what's left of it. You have to negotiate before you get insurance on the car that that you can buy it back. Some insurance companies do not have that in their how should I say, in your policy. So you have to find that out ahead of time. Some companies have it, some don't, and you'll have to check where you live, what province you live in, what state you live in, and find out if you can do that. Make sure, and I always say this to people, make sure you get it in writing. Don't just take it for granted. Where is it in your policy that states, yes, you can buy it back? Make sure you can. I have seen over the years all kinds of promises, and one claims person is not telling the other claims person, and all of a sudden communications get broken and they have to contact someone else. So even if you're dealing with something like this, make sure we're dealing with buying the car back, that you are write down the name of the person you're dealing with at the insurance company. So you can say that you were talking to George, yet today you're talking to Sally. So make sure you keep notes of who you're talking to and what they said to you, so that you can go back at the insurance company and say, they told me this or they told me that. So keep that in the back of your mind as to if something like this happens. Less so on a stolen car. There's not much you can do. Now, one thing about an appraisal is when you have an appraisal, it is, once they accept that appraisal, they have to give you that money. They can't just come up with a number. For example, let's use a nice easy number, $1,000 for your car. They've accepted the appraisal at $1,000. The insurance agent can't just turn around and say, well, we're just going to give you $800 today because, my dog bit my foot and I'm sore and I'm not going to be bothered doing the paperwork. I'm using a silly analogy, but I've had that happen where the insurance agent had no interest in paying the full amount, whether he was pocketing the extra money or he was trying to save the insurance company and score points with the insurance company. I don't know the answer to that, but they have to. And if they don't, always remember the insurance companies have a governing body, which is the Insurance Bureau of Canada, and they overlook the insurance practices of that agent or of that company. And I have time and time again come across situations where the insurance company has not been cooperating, and by saying to them that you are going to go to the Insurance Bureau of Canada because why are we not cooperating here? They tend to get a little more anxious to settle your way. No matter what they tell you, they have the power to do a few more things than they're letting on. So just keep that in the back of your mind and try to be calm. Don't yell or scream at the agents. Try to be very calm. Once you get the claims person, and usually in this case, you are dealing with the claims person at the insurance company. So try to keep calm and level-headed about this. No matter how angry you are, just try to stay calm. Getting excited does nothing but gets their back up. That claims person's backup. Now, one other thing I find, if you deal with an agent at your local insurance office, have them, if you're a good customer, go to bat for you. Uh, they have a bit of power with the insurance companies because may in many cases insure your house, your regular day-to-day cars with that insurance company, and they want your business. The insurance business, despite what you may think, there is not a whole lot of money involved. So every client they lose, that's money they don't have or don't get um, at the individual agents part of the agreement. They have to make a piece of that action. So and it's if they keep losing people because the insurance company they're dealing with is not cooperating, uh, it gets a little nasty. And that's where something that the agent may drop that insurance company. And in the end, indirectly, that affects the corporate part of it, and their corporate relations with their agents. So that's something to take into consideration. Now, one last thing that just sort of came up recently, talking to a client, was sound systems in your car. My car there is a little noisy. I looked at these two items. They are period type, a radio or period type sound system and period type speakers for the 60s, late 60s into the 70s. And they were the things I wanted to put in the car. Now, people love to put nice, fancy subwoofers and, sound from all four corners of their car. And I'm not that way because my car is too loud, so I'm not going to really get the benefit of having it. Just keep in mind, you need to talk with your insurance company about the kind of sound system you can put in your car and be insured for. That's another thing. If you have a really, really good system in your car and that guy who gets into your garage and takes it all out, or you have your car at a garage for some repairs and he gets in the parking lot and boom, takes your sound system out of your car, there's only a certain point where they will insure it for. So keep that in the back of mind. Yeah, back of your mind. Now, one other last little thing, when we're talking about insurance and people removing things, generally, if you take your car to a garage and they do park it outside, they are not responsible. So if you have to take your car out before it's fully restored to a garage to do some professional work that you can't do, make sure you have some kind of coverage on your car. Call your agent and make sure that's done, because I've met a lot of people that have had their car disappear. Here's a nice hot rod sitting in front of the garage and nobody's around on a Sunday afternoon. So keep that in the back of your mind, keeping some kind of small insurance policy on that car, even though you're not driving it. So a fire and theft kind of thing. So hopefully I've kind of summed up some of the things here. I'm sure some of you may have a question or two. I've not answered everything, but keep in mind that you need to be due diligence on this. You're going to kind of run into situations where that are special to you, depending on where you live and the things you do with the car. Today I found one vintage car. The insurance company won't insure it because he wants to tow with it. So he went to take a little trailer along with him and they won't let him do that to a car show. So keep that in mind. Always ask what you want to do with the car. If you're just taking it to a show here a couple of times a week, that's not a problem. But if you want to travel somewhere to a show, keep that in mind. So I'll open it back up to you, Alex, and you can open it up for questions. Hopefully I've covered most of what we have here.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, you've definitely given us a lot to think about, especially when it comes to insurance. So I appreciate that. I did have one question to ask you just off the bat. So you've talked quite a bit about owning a vintage car, obviously, but I'm curious if you have any vehicles that you really suggest as something that's a good almost starter intro, vintage car for someone that's really just brand new to this and they're looking to get out of their kind of daily commuter and into something a little more classic.
Well, I look at certain cars like, believe it or not, cars like the Mazda Miata were first out in 1990, and they're getting very collectible, excuse me. They have a kind of classic lines which were patterned after the Lotus Elan, the early Lotus Elan. So there's a kind of car that is collectible, and they're also good quality because they're Japanese. English cars right now tend to be down in price, so you could probably get a nice English sports car like an MGB or an MG Midget for a reasonable cost to get into a vintage car, and the prices are good, and they're not going to break you. For the most part, you can probably find someone to fix them for you because they're not that difficult. And also, parts are easy to come by. So that's, again, as I mentioned earlier, parts are a big thing, and they're a big thing for me. Being a cheapskate like I am, getting reasonably priced parts is important.
Yes, absolutely. And we actually have a comment in the Q&A here from Ron Foss, who had a comment about choosing a car where parts are easily available, either OEM or aftermarket, versus the cost of having parts fabricated can also be a big consideration, right? And I know
Yes.
Ron would be familiar with this, having fabricated the Fossmobile, but I know you've run into some of this too, right, Glenn, with your own work appraising and that kind of thing?
Yes. I get most of my parts because it's a Volkswagen from some fellas in BC. They're pretty good. They have a good selection. They have inexpensive parts, and then they have as close to OEM parts as possible, or OEM meaning original manufacturer. Uh, or sometimes I go on the internet and look for parts that are actually what they call NOS, which stands for new old stock. And I've had discussions after discussions with people. Nothing fits better than an original part. So if you can find an original part, that's great. I mean, today's what do we call it? The fabricating of parts is great, but doing it yourself can be difficult. I have one night ordered the wrong brakes, and I took the original and the ones I ordered and took a file out and shaped it slightly to make it fit. It worked fine. But 3D printing can help out on something like tail lights or things like that. There is even getting to be new plastics material that will handle some heat. So those kind of things to take into consideration when you can't find that little part anymore. Uh, and, CAD draw or CNC machines that can make parts for you. As they say, if you have enough money, you can get anything made. Jay Leno is a good example of that. Some of his collection of weird and wonderful cars he manages to keep on the road because he has a complete machine shop or knows where to go. Some things like radiators are, used to be able to get them rebuilt, but now you pretty well have to really search for something that fits or pay the big bucks to have one made for you, kind of thing. So
It's so interesting to think about how these new technologies and things like 3D printers can affect vintage car ownership as well, and kind of mixing the old and the new in some ways. So we do have another question in the chat here from Edward Wallerstein, who's asking what your thoughts are on making a classic car your daily driver.
that I think depends on where you live in Canada. I wouldn't do it here in, as we call it, the Rust Belt, the Salt Belt, just because I would cry. My car is in such a design that it traps all kinds of rust, water, salt in behind the fenders that would it'd be no time. Now, I suppose if you get your car undercoated, I knew I just bought a new vehicle that has a 10-year warranty against undercoating. I suppose if you have a new car or a vintage car that you've just restored and put this new miracle plastic undercoating on it, it might solve the problem. Now, if you live in Victoria, BC, or even some of the provinces that don't use salt, like my daughter lives in Manitoba, her Jeep, for example, she drives it every day, looks great shape, in great shape. There's no rust on it. Just because you would not believe what salt does to your car. Again, I know there was an article a number of years ago about somebody driving a Model A Ford all year round, and it it was good. He rigged up a heater for it because a lot of older cars did not have heaters. Up until the 60s, a lot of states in the US, a heater was optional. So if you brought up a car from the States, my friend had a Thunderbird that had no heater in it. He found it rather chilly dating his future wife in the car because they were always cold. A day like today here in Southern Ontario was only, say 8 or 9 degrees. Once you're out driving and air leaking in, older cars do leak a little air because your rubber seals just aren't as good as they were new. The cars are a little cool. It's kind of nice to have heat. So just depends, I think, on the environment where you live. If you have roads that are clean all the time, no salt, you might be able to get away with it. 50s cars are pretty good. All I'd suggest you do, and some of the old fellas used to do this, is oil coat the cars underneath, spray old engine oil underneath the car. And believe it or not, it works pretty well. We're not talking about, rust proofing your car, but we're just talking plain old engine oil sprayed up everywhere underneath the car. And doing it on a regular basis, maybe twice a year or whatever, you can get away with it. I know in Montreal, when I was a kid, we lived there for a short time. They used to put some kind of wax on the bumpers to keep salt off the chrome parts. And it was kind of a brown liquid. That's what the English call Waxall. And it was kind of, you put it on and it kind of, you washed it off in the spring and, your bumpers pretty well came out new. It was kind of an interesting, I haven't seen it in years, but it's something to keep in mind if you want to drive a car all year round. Just remember that they don't have the conveniences that a new car has, i.e. heated seats or heated steering wheel, which I just got in my new vehicle. And those kind of things are really nice. But, some of the older cars had seat heaters under the seats. So, hey, your children will be warm in the back seat. So, it just, like I say, depends on the environment, the kind of car you have. And if you've restored it yourself, then you'll know its weak spots and you can compensate for that with extra rust proofing in those areas or rust preventative measures. That's probably the best way.
Absolutely. Well, and it's interesting to think how regional it is too, right? Because it is very much dependent on your own environment and your own weather, what
Right.
you're dealing with. I'm curious if you have any sources that you really like to look to locate those parts that you might be looking
Well,
for. We have a comment in the chat about eBay Motors and Hershey Swap Meet as being great sources, but I'm curious if you have any of your own, Glenn.
well, one trick I always learned working in the scrap business, we were always looking for parts, and was to find the part number of a car that's similar. I know in the museum we have a 55 or 56 Pontiac convertible. Well, some of the mechanical parts on that car are probably interchangeable with some of the equivalent Chevy parts. So if you have a Chevy, you have access to a Chevy part and you have a Pontiac or vice versa, sometimes you can find that part that you need. Sometimes some companies just use generic parts for certain things, and If you have the original part number, match it to the part that they have advertised, sometimes you can find a very, very similar part, or a part that was supplemented when that part went out of production, kind of thing. So keep that in mind. General Motors just does not like to redesign a part unless, and I'm sure this is all with other companies, they like to use that part until it totally becomes unusable for their purposes for the car. So keep that in mind and be kind of reasonable. Yes, I find I search the internet. Going to some of the big swap meets is a good idea if you have the time. Where I live here in Southern Ontario, there's one in Lindsay. There's a show up in Sterling, Ontario. If you want to stay in Canada, going to the States is good, but with the certain conditions we're in at the moment, may not be as easy to travel across the border as it once was. So and Facebook Marketplace, I just found a partly yesterday on Facebook Marketplace uh, that will probably fit my MG or my wife's MG. So if that works out, it might be a cheap alternative to what I'm doing presently of restoring some carburetor. And by the time that's done, could be end up the same price as buying a complete new part. Or yes, this is a aftermarket, but good quality part. So that's the best advice I can give. Just hunt. As I said to many people, the hunt sometimes is just as much fun as installing it. The people you meet are usually fantastic. I now have a friend in Budapest, Hungary, that I bought parts from, and we become friends. So, exchange Christmas cards, stuff like that. And he's always on the lookout for interesting stuff. And if I need something, he will hunt it down in Europe, which is a totally different marketplace. So,
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah,
yes,
I always tell people about the stories that you learn along the way, right? With the car
right.
industry, it's the hunt and half of it's the people you meet. So,
Yes, it's a
yeah.
lot of fun.
I do have a couple people that have raised their hands here, so I just want to remind everyone, if you do have any questions for Glenn, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A. We have 1 or 2 more minutes here to answer any questions you may have. I'm also curious about your opinion, Glenn, as an appraiser yourself. When you're restoring a vehicle, looking at something that's, say, show quality for that level of authenticity versus looking at an aftermarket part, how does that factor into your own appraisals?
If it's the right part that went on the car, I generally will accept it as original. There has been some thought over in the last few years about upgrading some parts, like i.e. disc brakes on a car. I have a friend with a 53 Volkswagen. He now has disc brakes because people, in my case, a lady pulled in front of me with a Tahoe, slammed on her four-wheel disc brakes, and they're huge, stopped, and she could literally see the panic on my face as I was standing on the brake pedal. My friend Jim decided he had a similar situation. He put disc brakes in, they're unnoticeable. So there's kind of things like that that make you want to change a few things. Maybe they aren't authentic, but there is safety. Adding seatbelts into a car, that's a plus for me. My fetish is, or excuse me, fetish, but something that bothers me is I got rear-ended once many, many years ago and had a headache for about 3 days. So headrests to me are important. You have some vintage cars, 60s English cars, etc. You can add certain devices into that look period and will allow you to drive more safely in today's traffic. You got to keep that in mind. The traffic patterns have changed immensely. You can think of dad's old car well, dad's old car may not be as easy to drive as it once was because it's just not quick enough. It doesn't stop fast enough. And, the tail lights are too small. So sometimes you may have to add to the car to make it safer.
Oh, if you have time, Glenn, we have one more quick question in the chat here.
Yep.
We've got a question about a car club, and they're saying that it's getting harder and harder to attract new members, and they're just curious if you have any views on how to keep something like a vintage car club going for the future and how to attract new members. And I think this is something too that we can comment on as well from the museum standpoint. But if you have any thoughts, go ahead, Glenn.
Yes. There was a club in Europe, I want to say Belgium or Holland or Netherlands. And what they do is they go to the high schools and they get children that are interested in cars, and they invite them over. You bring them to your house, you show them your car, you help wash it. In some cases, you let them drive your car, help you repair the car to get you more, or to teach them the nuances of a vintage vehicle and what you like about the car, and not just looking at pictures, or they get a hands-on kind of feel for the car. I know if you go to some places, I know in Oshawa, during the big event in the fall or in the end of the summer, people will put the little guy in the car or let somebody sit in the car to, do I like a vintage car? Can I live with the big steering wheel or the real seats that sink? So that's what I suggest is, inviting younger people to get a hands-on feel for the cars. Just inviting them to a meeting is not going to do any much for them, but touching, feeling, fixing, those are the kind of things they learn. Cars were simple then, and generally it's an introduction to newer cars. It teaches them the little nuances of the cars. One of my sons is actually a mechanic, and he likes vintage cars. So it's one of those things that being around, watching, touching, feeling, using your tools, as long as they don't lose them, is a good thing. So that's what I suggest is the hands-on kind of thing. It might be a little more difficult if you're in the Ferrari club, letting them touch or feel, or you need members that are very happy to let people touch the car. I'm not worried about a scratch or, a dent, which happened when my son left something there and a tent pole fell on my car. So those kind of things you just live and learn. I'm too old to worry about that kind of stuff. But that's my biggest suggestion is let the young people touch, feel, or let them drive it, or teach them how to, do things like that.
I think that engaging,
Yes.
it's a great point, and that's something that we really strive to do as well, is that level of interactivity and that level of connection, because I think that really does create those formative memories.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, and I think aside from that too, it's just reaching out and coordinating with like Glenn has mentioned, working with existing sort of something like convergence or festivals that are already happening, and building off of that. So